Alright. Come on, you come on, come on!
No, don't like that.
Sis? What the hell is even that?
So I grew up with the Christopher Reeve Superman, despite being a Zoomer. Well, one of the older Zoomers anyway. I wasn't really a fan of Man of Steel, or Superman Returns. For me, Superman will always be Christopher Reeve. I loved the first two films. The first one is a classic and changed the superhero genre. I've heard people say mixed things about the second one, but I liked it. Richard Donner, who directed the first film, departed partway through the second film, and Richard Lester took over, resulting in lots of changes to the film. Donner's departure also caused friction between the cast and producers, Alexander and Ilya Salkind. There's a different version of Superman 2 that was released called the Donner Cut, reverting a lot of the changes that Lester made. When I found out they cut out one of my favourite lines in the whole film, that made me not want to watch it. I mean, how can you remove this line?
General? Would you care to step outside?
They replaced it with this.
General? Haven't you ever heard of freedom of the press?
What have you done?
Nah, it just doesn't hit the same. I'll probably check it out at some point. I've heard good things about it. If you've watched it, let me know if it's any good in the comments. While we're on the topic of Superman 2, I'm not sure how well the writer understands Superman.
They need machines to fly.
So did you until like 2 minutes ago. But anyway, now we come to the third film, and the third film is something else. I mean, what is this? Oh, that freaked me out so much when I was younger. Also, Superman turns evil and has to fight himself in a junkyard. That also creeped me out when I was younger. To see Christopher Reeve's Superman suddenly turn evil.
Yeah? Alright. Come on, you come on!
The film also has some strange attempts at comedy, and the whole tone of the film feels off. So let's take a look at Superman 3 and see why it's so different from the other two. I'm Firelink Frontier, welcome to the channel. Here I talk about films, TV shows and video games. Released in 1983, 3 years after the previous film, Superman 3 is, well, it's a little different than the other two. There's some weird comedy elements that I don't think really work. Like Superman 2, Superman 3 was directed by Richard Lester, and he was mostly known for making comedies, and you can see this especially in this film. This time he's fully in control of the film, and in the opening credits we see a kind of slapstick comedy, and straight away the tone feels different from the previous two films. The film's plot involves a billionaire called Ross Webster. Webster is a typical generic rich villain that wants to take over the world through financial domination. He comes into contact with Gus Gorman, a computer programmer played by comedy actor Richard Pryor. Webster blackmails Gus into helping him. Pryor seems to be very miscast in this film, and he usually plays comedic roles. Well, I suppose this film is supposed to be somewhat funny, so maybe not miscast necessarily, but I just don't think he works in this film at all. As this is going on, Superman returns to Smallville and reconnects with his childhood friend Lorna Lang and her son. He saves the son from a harvester accident and extinguishes a fire at a chemical plant. These moments are some of the better moments of the film, with Superman acting as the classic hero and saving the day. Webster orders Gus to hack into a weather satellite and create a storm over Columbia to destroy coffee plants and corner the coffee market. Yeah, it's all a bit over the top and silly, but considering the first film had Superman fly around the Earth to turn back time, perhaps I can be a little more lenient. Superman saves the day again, and Webster, realising Superman is a threat, orders Gus to synthesise some kryptonite. Gus gives kryptonite to Superman and it corrupts him. He then goes about committing terrible acts of evil, like straightening the Leaning Tower of Pisa and blowing out the Olympic flame. It's all very heavy stuff. Superman finally has a nervous breakdown and splits into two versions of himself, Evil Superman and Clark Kent. This is easily the best part of the film, and I remember being terrified of Evil Superman when I was young. We see the two of them fight as Clark is forced to confront himself. When Clark does beat Evil Superman, we get probably the best moment in the film. although I'm not sure about these effects. Now that Webster thinks Superman is out of the picture, with the help of Gus he goes about building a supercomputer, but the only problem is it becomes self-aware, because of course it does. It then defends itself against anyone that tries to turn it off. And then we get this horrifying scene. I'm sure this moment scarred me as a child. I mean, what is this? Vera turns into a cyborg creature, and Superman has to use acid to finally stop the machine. He then goes about putting right all his evil acts. If the plot of the film seems a bit weird, that's because it is. It's a bit of a mess. There are some pretty good moments, but overall, it doesn't seem to know where it's going. Richard Donner, who directed the first film, and parts of the second, had stated that he wanted to do 2 more Superman films, with Brainiac being the villain of the third. So I'm sure that influenced this film, with the plot revolving around the supercomputer, which I'm sure could have been Brainiac in a different film. Donner departed during production of the second film due to creative differences with the film's producers, Alexander and Ilya Sulkind. Also, Mario Puzo, writer of the Godfather book, who was involved in the screenplay of the first 2 films, did not take part in this film. Webster is a poor replacement for Lex Luthor. Not that I particularly liked the jokey sort of Lex Luthor we saw in the first 2 films. Personally, I would have preferred a more serious villain, but I do enjoy Gene Hackman's Lex Luthor. After seeing how the producers treated Richard Donner, Gene Hackman refused to return to the franchise while the producers were there, and Webster ended up being his replacement. He's just a generic megalomaniac villain who wants to take over the world for some reason, and the whole thing's a bit of a mess. Margot Kidder, who played Lois in the first 2 films, was cut out of the majority of this film, and is replaced by Lorna Lang. Margot is said to have voiced her dissatisfaction at the departure of Richard Donner, and had a strained relationship with the producers. In the film's 2006 DVD commentary, Ilya Sulkind said that there was little need for Lois Lane in this film, as her relationship with Superman ended at the end of Superman 2. Christopher Reeve is still good in the film, but he's good in all the films, and is still my favourite Superman. I really liked seeing him play the evil version of Superman, and he does it convincingly. Considering how he'd been such a likeable and kind person in the first 2 films, there's something really strange about seeing evil Superman in this. I think if the plot of the film revolved around this, rather than the silliness of Webster and the supercomputer, then this could have been a great film. Also, they needed to take out the silly slapstick comedy, as that didn't work either. Richard Pryor's character didn't work in this film. He was supposed to bring a sort of comic relief, but the film just wasn't funny. He jokingly said on The Tonight Show how he'd loved Superman 2 and wanted to be in a future Superman film. The producers were eager to cast him, and Pryor was paid $5 million to star in the film. It was released in 1983 and was met with mixed reviews, with much of the criticism going to the slapstick comedy and Richard Pryor in particular. Perhaps with a few changes the film could have worked, but due to the creative differences, an unhappy cast and some questionable plot lines, the film is a bit of a mess. However, it's nowhere near as bad as Superman 4, The Quest for Peace. I'm Firelink Frontier, thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe.